The delegates would please take their seats. We're going to get started. If you could make your way to the seats. I want to announce and get consent that we have a change in our schedule due to people's fly-out schedules. We're going to actually flip the order, and the next order of the day will be the election of the Bureau of the Assembly, and starting with the President. The Standing Committee has received only one nomination, that of Paolo Ali from Italy. There being only one candidate for the post, the election can take place by acclamation, which I now invite the Assembly to do. I now declare that Paolo Ali is elected as President of the Assembly. Paolo, do you have a few words for us? Would you like to take the podium?
Mr. President, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, let me first of all thank our Turkish colleagues and friends for the excellent organization of this annual session. We are going to have a Vice President from Turkey, and this is a clear demonstration of how important Turkey is for us. Thank you. I wish to thank you all for electing me. I am proud and humbled at being entrusted with such a great responsibility. And let me assure you that I am acutely aware of the difficult and challenging times we are facing. Major transformations are taking place in our world, and this places a heavy responsibility on our shoulders as politicians. Let me pay tribute to Mike Turner for his strong and balanced leadership during the last 2 years, so full of major challenges. I am strongly committed to serving our Assembly as President, but I shall need the help of each and all of you. I will be available to listen to and talk with everybody anytime you need, as I believe that dialogue is crucial for our Assembly, an Assembly which is an even more powerful tool of parliamentary diplomacy. We must continue to be strongly united in facing the different challenges surrounding our alliance, and we need to be open-minded in considering the evolving scenarios inter alia in the Far East, Africa and India. We also need to continue to focus on the changing strategic horizon related to such issues as cybersecurity, asymmetric warfare, human trafficking. All this requires an adaptive approach and stronger political and human awareness and commitment. We also need to strengthen and enlarge our partnerships and cooperation with other parliamentary assemblies. I wish to especially thank Secretary General Stoltenberg for his incredible work serving NATO. And I particularly appreciated his emphasizing the need for reinforcing the links between NATO and the European institutions. I believe that we are ready to enhance our cooperation with the European Parliament and the European Commission. A personal word of thanks to our Secretary General, David Hobbs, and his excellent staff, who always ensure perfect organization and top-level initiatives. Finally, dear colleagues, allow me to conclude with some remarks in my language, in Italian. A nome del mio paese, che attraverso di me ha oggi l'onore di essere nuovamente rappresentato dopo molti anni al massimo livello nella nostra Assemblea, desidero assicurare il costante e continuo impegno dell'Italia al servizio dell'Alleanza Atlantica e della nostra Assemblea. Desidero portare un saluto forte e solidale ai nostri amici turchi, con i quali da sempre condividiamo comuni sfide, come le migrazioni, in questo tempo così difficile per loro. A loro e a tutti i paesi che soffrono per il terrorismo vorrei portare un messaggio personale. Ero molto giovane quando l'Italia sperimentò 20 anni di terrorismo, forse ricordate le Brigate Rosse. Furono anni terribili, per me ancora più drammatici, perché furono gli anni della mia giovinezza. E i valori e le speranze di un'intera generazione sembrarono destinati a essere sopraffatti dal buio della paura. Ricordo bene come solo l'unità del popolo italiano, la nostra profonda fede nei valori della democrazia e dello Stato di diritto e il sacrificio della vita di molti grandi italiani ci permisero di battere quella tremenda piaga. Unità del popolo e difesa delle istituzioni democratiche sono il solo modo, anche oggi, di vincere in maniera definitiva la sfida del terrorismo e delle aggressioni ovunque esse si manifestino. Questo è il nostro compito come politici e come donne e uomini che amano questo nostro mondo e questo nostro tempo difficile e appassionante. Thank you all, and I am looking forward to working with you.
Paolo, again, congratulations. We all look forward to your leadership. Next, we will have the election of vice presidents. We now proceed to the election of the vice presidents. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the outgoing vice presidents for their valuable contributions to the work of the Assembly. There are 5 positions to be filled. One of the current vice presidents, Severe Merli, is eligible for re-election. The Standing Committee has received 5 nominations for the 5 positions of vice president. The 5 nominations are Metin Baydar. Would you please stand as I call your name? Metin Baydar of Turkey, Joseph Day of Canada, Raza of Lithuania, Tektin Kazak of Bulgaria, and Severe Merli. If you would all please stand. These are the 5 candidates for 5 positions. The election can take place by acclamation, which I now invite the Assembly to do by. I declare the 5 vice presidents elected. Congratulations to you all, and we'll be returning back to the schedule of our agenda, which will take us to an address by John Jacobs, President of the Youth Atlantic Treaty Association. It is my pleasure in welcoming to our Assembly Mr. John Jacobs, President of the Youth Atlantic Treaty Association. John, I congratulate you on your election at the Atlantic Treaty Association General Assembly in Toronto last month. We greatly appreciate the work of your association in helping to explain to the next generation NATO's roles in international security. I would also like to thank the YADA volunteers who have been helping at the registration desk and at committee meetings, who are assisting in the plenary today. John, you have the floor.
Thank you, Congressman Sturner. Distinguished guests, esteemed organizers, good afternoon to Nadine. It is both an honor and a pleasure to be here. First, I would like to express my gratitude to NATO Parliamentary Assembly for extending the warm invitation. I also would like to express my thanks to the Turkish Youth Atlantic Treaty Association. For Turkey, the past year has been a volatile one, and I'm happy to see you show your dedication to the transatlantic relationship and its values. Thank you also for your continued assistance to NATO Parliamentary Assembly. I also would like to take a moment in honor of Ambassador Omar Akbel, who sadly passed away earlier this year and served his 88 chapter in Turkey as president for many years. And finally, I would like to thank the Turkish Parliamentary Assembly delegation for their aid in organizing the ministerial meetings. YATA and our parent organization ATA have a long-standing partnership with NATO Parliamentary Assembly, which has granted our colleagues the opportunity to participate in the recent sessions in The Hague, Budapest, Tirana, and Stavanger. A tradition I'm keen to continue. This tradition has allowed us to work alongside esteemed members of Parliament such as yourselves, to bridge the gap between the issue policymakers face today and the Alliance's future. A bridge between the present and the next generation. Our goal is to ensure that the members of IATA, comprised of junior diplomats, military officers, academics, think tanks and journalists, each of which are currently working in some capacity on security and defense policy in 37 countries, are positioned to transition into leadership roles with a clear vision for the future of the alliance that strengthens our collective defense. Despite the range of discussions we have heard regarding terrorism, deterrence and the transatlantic relationship, a key issue which must be addressed is the generation gap we are currently experiencing in the sector of defense and security. A generation with no Cold War memory, born into an environment of hybrid threats and an increasing unpredictable world. Now, more than ever, it becomes decisive to connect the youth with the policymakers to bridge that gap. The Atlantic Treaty Association foresaw this issue, and in 1996, during the General Assembly held in Rome, formed the Youth Atlantic Treaty Association, marking this year as our 4th Lustrum year. From Lisbon to Helsinki, from Vancouver to Ankara, we've been working alongside ATA and IATA members, as well as fellow youth-oriented organizations, to ensure that young professionals have a voice in the policy-making sphere and direct access to the national and international stakeholders. Alone or with partner organizations, we continue to build programs in the academic, military and diplomatic training sectors to foster a new generation of policymakers who share the transatlantic values of the alliance and who have the foresight to shape a better landscape for the future of all NATO ally and partner countries. We are very proud of our activities in the past years, as they symbolize the inclusion of the youth into decision-making of today, such as the earlier mentioned ministerial meetings organized last year in Antalya. An inclusion we do not take lightly at IATA, but one we feel places a responsibility on us to carry forward the work accomplished by all of you here today. With the renewed vigor of our lustrum, IATA has set out an agenda to focus on questions in 5 key issues, which we believe are of utmost importance for the transatlantic community to focus on, and where we as youth and future of the transatlantic community should dedicate our time and effort to. Those being counterterrorism, hybrid warfare, women and security, defense spending, and energy security. By setting out this agenda, we continue to build our programs, expertise, and network with a key goal in mind: to ensure a stronger, more rapidly deployable alliance that preserves peace and stability by combining foresight, diplomacy, and action. To achieve this, we encourage all of you to engage with your national IATA associations to support our growing community of students, young professionals, and committed Atlanticists. We look forward to continuing our relationship and wish you all a successful remainder of the session. Tesekur Ederim, thank you. Mr. Turner? Thank you.
John, thank you for your message, and thank you for your work with the Youth Atlantic Treaty Association. We will now proceed with our resolutions and the discussion of any amendments. We'll turn to the first one, which is the text from the Civil Dimension of Security Committee on forging a concentrated response to terrorism at home. No amendments have been tabled to this draft. Mrs. Jane Cordy will be presenting. Jane?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And before I begin, I would like to thank you so much for the tremendous work that you have done as President of our Assembly. Thank you. I'd also like to thank Andreas Evius, our committee's director, for the excellent work that he continues to do for our committee. I'm honored to introduce to you the resolution on forging a concerted response to terrorism at home, which was adopted unanimously at our Committee on the Civil Dimension of Security. The threat of terrorism in the Euro-Atlantic area has reached a new level of severity in the last few years. Horrific, high-casualty terrorist attacks took place in many of our cities, including in this great city of Istanbul, where we are meeting today. Unfortunately, the possibility of new, large-scale attacks in our societies remains very real. The resolution presented to you draws attention to our biggest weakness, namely that while the threat of terrorism is increasingly transnational, our responses remain largely national. There is no shortage of counterterrorism cooperation frameworks within the transatlantic area, and even on a global scale. The instruments are there, but there is a lack of political will to use them to their full potential. We need to address this problem urgently. The resolution also calls on the governments and parliaments of the Euro-Atlantic area to put in place a series of concerted measures to combat terrorism. It urges our countries to ensure that our national counterterrorism services have sufficient resources to be able to thwart terrorist attacks. At the same time, it is imperative that we strengthen our democratic oversight mechanisms over the security sector in order to maintain the balance between security and civil liberties and to prevent the misuse of information received through international data sharing channels. Last but not least, we need to tackle the root causes of terrorism and exchange best practices on preventing radicalization and on promoting moderate voices. Colleagues, eliminating the terrorist threat completely is likely an impossible task. However, concerted national and international efforts, combining efficient law enforcement apparatuses, resolve in tackling arms trafficking and terrorist financing, and preventative work can achieve the goal of destroying terrorist networks and can bring the threat to a manageable level. Thank you, colleagues, and I hope that you will support this important resolution.
Thank you, Jane, for your hard work on that and your excellent presentation. Prior to voting to adopting the resolution, does anyone wish to speak on the resolution? Seeing none, then if you'll locate your voting cards. Those in favor, please raise your voting cards. Thank you. Those against, please raise your voting cards. Anyone opposed? The draft resolution is agreed to. Jane, thank you again. Next, we will turn to the resolution from the Economics and Security Committee on Allied defense spending. No amendments have been tabled for this draft resolution. Also, I call on Mr. Fike-Öztrak, Chairman of the Committee, on behalf of the General Rapporteur, to present the resolution. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, I also would like to start by thanking to the valuable work done by our President and the very big contribution to our Assembly realized by him. Thank you very much. Mr. President, dear colleagues, it's my great pleasure to introduce the resolution adopted by the Economics and Security Committee on Allied defense spending. I make this presentation on behalf of our rapporteur and colleague Senator Bokel, who unfortunately cannot be with us today. Before starting, I would like to thank to him for preparing this resolution, as well as to our colleagues in the committee for their valuable contributions, which make this text, which improve this text further. The resolution in front of you stresses the importance of NATO member countries' commitment to increase defense outlays in an ever more challenging security environment. There are numerous examples of instability which characterize the era we live in, and we must be prepared to cope with these challenges. The resolution refers to the fact that while other international players, such as Russia and China, have massively invested in defense over the past decade, the Euro-Atlantic zone has taken a long time to react to this changing security environment. We have been underinvesting. The resolution underlines that we must live up to commitments made at summit meeting in Wales and Warsaw, according to which NATO member countries agreed to dedicate a minimum 2% of their GDP on defense and more than 20% of defense budgets on major equipment, including related research and development. But obviously reaching a certain level of spending is not an end. in itself. The ultimate goal is to bolster capabilities and in so doing to improve both national and collective security. Thus far, only 5 allied countries have achieved the 2% of GDP spending goal. Hence, the need for parliamentarians to send a strong message to the Euro-Atlantic community. This resolution does so by urging our respective governments and parliaments to spend more and better, as well as to do this in a transparent way that welcomes the input of key private and public stakeholders. We need to bolster efficiency and improve cooperation in order to enhance our military capabilities and our capacity to work together. We need to encourage the pooling and sharing of military capabilities, enhance procurement cooperation, and encourage economically sensible trade in defense material. We finally need to ensure that there is funding available to address the sources of global and regional insecurity. My dear colleagues, we have a chance to improve cohesion within our alliance in age of divisive politics. This resolution lays out a broad blueprint for all of us to build support for a stronger and more coherent collective defense posture. I thus invite you to support this resolution. Thank you very much for your attention.
Questions and comments, turning to Min Campbell.
First of all, I want to join with others, Chair, in thanking you for the way in which you've conducted your responsibilities as President, and in particular I have in mind the effort which you made, along with our former colleague Hugh Bailey, in going onto the Hill in Washington and making sure that as many members of Congress continue to understand the importance of this Assembly, not only to Europe, but to the United States as well. I don't want to sound self-righteous about raising the issue of 2%, because I actually think that the United Kingdom doesn't spend enough, although it may already have reached, I think it's 2.3%. We've passed resolutions of this kind in the past, but a resolution is no longer sufficient. This is not a question of choice any longer, it's a question of necessity. And the necessity is to ensure not what we spend, but how we spend it. There is no point in having a fully conscript army with 10-ton trucks. The nature of warfare now requires much more. Very quickly to finish, there are 3 principles: common procurement, interoperability, and force specialization. If we adopt these principles, then what we spend will be even more effective than people understand by the minimum of 2%.
Very good. Anyone else wish to comment or ask a question before voting on the resolution? Seeing none, would you locate your voting cards? Everyone raise their voting cards who wishes to vote in favor. Voting in favor. Excellent. Lower your voting cards. All those opposed, raise your voting cards. Seeing none, there's one in the negative. The resolution is adopted.
Thank you.
Faik, thank you for your leadership and for your presentation. We will now turn to the Defense and Security Committee on supporting NATO's post-Warsaw defense and deterrence posture. Joseph Day is the General Rapporteur and will be presenting the draft resolution. You have the floor.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me join all of the other comments in thanking you very much for your leadership over the past 2 years, as well as that of our Secretary General, David Hobbs. We appreciate very much the guidance that we receive as we go about our busy parliamentary lives and then try to come here well prepared for the various meetings we have. And in particular, with respect to defense and security, I wanted to acknowledge the work and help of Ethan, Ethan Corbin, who is our director and has done a great job. This particular resolution flows out of a report which is just an excellent report outlining the work that was done over the past year by the Defense and Security Committee supporting NATO's post-Warsaw defense and deterrent posture. And you've heard several speeches here today talking about this evolution to the deterrent posture. Now, if you have your resolution in front of you, I'd like to refer you to the second page. We have one correction to make, Mr. Chairman, and that's in Clause 19 at page 3. In Clause 21, page 3, section E. The word preserving, during a discussion in our committee yesterday, it was agreed that a better a verb would be respecting. So that should read, to maintain committed to a strong deterrence posture while supporting ongoing NATO-Russia dialogue with the aim of respecting the territorial integrity of sovereign states. With that one change, that we had a very extensive discussion on this particular resolution, and let me just give you a few of the highlights, if I may, of what's in this resolution. But Russia's aggression in the east and the persistent instability in the south require what is being termed a 360-degree approach to security, to maintain peace at home and to project stability abroad. This resolution calls for attention to a strong, credible defense and deterrent policy for all NATO member states. It also calls the attention to NATO partner states facing Russian aggression, in particularly with respect of the territorial integrity of all nation states. In Warsaw, allies took a step further and established a multinational enhanced forward presence in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland. This highlights NATO's transition from emergency reassurance measures to a more permanent deterrent presence along its eastern flank. These battalions will play a crucial role serving as a deterrence measure in that particular region. In addition to the new measures taken by the alliance in Warsaw, the United States announced the quadrupling of the European Reassurance Initiative funding for the coming year. This will greatly increase NATO's capabilities and affirms the United States' commitment to transatlantic security. Furthermore, the NATO ballistic missile defense system has been finally reached an initial operational capacity, which is good news. Also, the signature of the Accession Protocol for Montenegro demonstrates NATO's commitment to the open door policy. Enlargement is an essential channel to achieve peace and stability in the Euro-Atlantic region. And to reiterate the point made by Lord Campbell, only 5 allies meet the NATO guideline to spend 2% of gross domestic product on defense today. In addition, only 10 allies allocate 20% of their defense spending to major equipment and research and development. The resolution, therefore, urges allied governments and parliamentarians to make further efforts to become strong alliance defense contributors and build upon the initiatives taken over the past 2 NATO summits. Those are highlights of this particular resolution, colleagues, and I would commend it to your approval. Mr. Chairman.
I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be accepted for consideration as presented and amended by Joe Day. Are there any objections? No objections. Seeing no objections to be considered. Are there anyone who would like to comment on the resolution or have a question? Seeing none, then we'll proceed to vote on the resolution as presented and amended by Joe Day. Please locate your voting cards. If you'll raise your voting cards if you're voting in the affirmative. Please lower your voting cards. Is there anyone who chooses to vote opposed? Please raise your voting cards. Seeing none, the resolution is passed. Thank you, Joe, for your success in that resolution.
Thank you, colleagues.
Well, Mr. Day gets to stay to present the next resolution also. It is from the Defense and Security Committee on maintaining international support in Afghanistan. Joe, we look forward to your presentation on this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and colleagues. This report would normally be given by our special rapporteur for the Defense and Security Committee, Wolfgang Helmich of Germany, but unfortunately he's not been able to be here. I understand that he's currently in the hospital, and we have sent along from the Assembly our best wishes for a speedy recovery. So with your permission, I will give you a brief outline of what is in this particular report. And the report, or the resolution, again evolves from a report that was prepared and adopted by our Committee of Defense and Security. This resolution voices our strong support for continued international cooperation and investment in a peaceful and prosperous Afghanistan. And the relative deterioration of the security and political environment over the past year puts at risk the significant progress and investment made by the international community in Afghanistan over the past several years. And let me just highlight some of the progress. Progress has been made in Afghanistan over the past 15 years since the fall of the Taliban regime in 2001. Since 2001, Afghanistan, along with the assistance of the international community, has made significant progress in areas such as democratic processes, education, health care, human rights, including those of women, and even free media. All of this is helping move the country towards a democratic transition that will ensure the rule of law, guaranteeing the rights of all Afghan citizens. But much work remains to be done. Areas such as combating corruption, electoral reform, the further empowerment of women, counter-narcotics trafficking, economic development, and a secure security environment are all still need attention from the government and from the international partners and institutions assisting them. Colleagues, every day the men and women of our armed services are working hard in Afghanistan to strengthen the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces in the hopes of creating a security environment capable of fostering peaceful and prosperous nation. This resolution recognizes the urgency of international assistance needed at all levels in Afghanistan to help ensure this as well. It urges all governments contributing to Resolute Support Mission to work more closely with the government in Kabul to fill the capability gaps of the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces, and to work towards stronger state institutions. The resolution also calls for efforts to improve regional cooperation to combat the spread of violent extremist and drug trafficking networks. This resolution calls for the government to seize upon the recent negotiated peace with the Hizb-e-Islami as an opportunity to reboot the dormant peace process with the Taliban. The resolution also stresses the need to continue to focus on gender issues in Afghan-wide development projects. I believe, honorable colleagues, that this resolution is worthy of your support, and I present it to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Joe, for the presentation. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on the resolution? Anyone who wishes to speak? If not, we will proceed to a vote. Please locate your voting cards. All those who wish to vote in the affirmative, please raise your voting card. Thank you. All those opposed, raise your voting cards. Those who are opposed, we see one. All of those who wish to abstain, raise your voting cards. We see none. Okay. Joe, thank you very much. The resolution is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Tuning to our next resolution, it is from the Political Committee on Defeating Daesh. 2 amendments have been filed to this draft resolution. Raza is the General Rapporteur of the committee and will come forward to present the resolution.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, it's a great pleasure to present to you the draft resolution defeating Daesh that was discussed in the Political Committee yesterday. While Daesh is now on the defensive in Iraq and in Syria, there is still a long way to go before we see lasting stability in the region. This resolution recognizes that military efforts are needed to degrade and ultimately defeat Daesh. But the resolution also notes a lack of unity and coordination among international actors, both in the fight against Daesh and in ending the civil war in Syria. Russia's military intervention in Syria has not been helpful, and the regime of Bashar al-Assad continues to perpetrate systematic human rights violations in Syria. The resolution expresses concern over the devastating humanitarian crisis that the ongoing conflicts in Syria and Iraq have triggered. The resolution states that a broad approach is needed to defeat Daesh and put an end to violent extremism. The resolution also recognizes that eventually a political solution is needed to foster lasting regional stability. Beyond a necessary victory over Daesh on the battlefield, defeating this and other terrorist organizations requires a concerted effort to alter the conditions which originally allowed them to flourish. Consequently, the resolution calls for the application of determined diplomatic pressure on the regime of Bashar al-Assad and its allies to bring peace to Syria and to protect Syria's civilian population. Continuing the fight against Daesh in Iraq and Syria while deepening cooperation among NATO partner countries, particularly those in the Gulf and in the Mediterranean, in order to ensure a broad unity of purpose in this campaign. An increase in humanitarian aid to the besieged people of Syria and Iraq, and providing greater support to countries in the region which have granted asylum to refugees of those wars. Continued and, if possible, increased support to the Iraqi security forces to enhance their capacity to fight and defeat Daesh. Making additional economic and financial assistance to the countries of the MENA region available to improve conditions for the broader population and thereby stave off future extremist threats. Encouraging the Iraqi government and all relevant parties there to work to foster interethnic and intersectarian reconciliation and pursue inclusive policies that allow all segments of that society to participate fully in the political process of the country, supporting the work of governments, NGOs, and citizens in the MENA region to build more plural and ultimately more democratic forms of government that enable all citizens to participate actively in shaping governance in their societies and thus defeat extremist ideologies. Dear colleagues, in closing, let me stress that NATO allies and partners must stand firmly together to face this challenge. And we also need to improve international coordination and cooperation if we want to defeat Daesh and other terror organizations and bring lasting stability and peace to the region. This is the essence of this resolution. I thank you very much for your attention and looking forward to your comments.
Raza, thank you for that excellent presentation. Would anyone like to speak on the general draft of the resolution before we proceed to the amendments? Anyone wish to speak on the amendment, on the resolution? Hearing none, we will go then to the amendments. We come to amendment number 1, which proposes to insert a new paragraph after paragraph 5. I call on Osman back to move the first amendment. Osman, you have 1 minute.
We have, in the political committee yesterday, we have discussed this issue together with our reporter, Rasa. And there was a procedural issue, so that's why we give these 2 amendments. So Rasa and myself signed these amendments. So this will make more introductory and explainable for the resolution.
Raza, you wish to comment on the amendment?
Yeah, I agree. We agreed yesterday that we will find the best wording for the amendment, and it was done.
Anyone wish to comment on the amendment? Seeing none, if you'll locate your voting cards, if everyone would raise their voting cards who's in favor of the amendment. Raise your voting cards if you're in favor of the amendment. Okay, lower your voting cards. Anyone who is opposed to the amendment, please raise your voting cards voting no. Seeing none, the amendment passes. Turning then to amendment number 2, which proposes to insert a new paragraph after paragraph 5. I also call again on Osman to move amendment number 2. Osman, you have 1 minute.
Yes, as I explained yesterday, we have discussed again, but this makes the using Genel Communique and UNSCR 2254 resolution for Syria to open the political transition. So that's we discuss again with Rasa.
Yeah, both amendments are together.
Excellent.
They are complementing each other.
The rapporteur is in favor of the amendment?
Yes, yes.
Are there anyone else who wishes to comment on this amendment? Seeing none, those in favor, please raise your voting cards. Raise your voting cards to vote yes. Lower your voting cards. Those who wish to vote no, please raise your voting cards. Anyone who wishes to vote no. Seeing none, the amendment passes. We will now turn to the resolution itself. Those in favor of the resolution as amended, please raise your voting cards to vote yes in favor of the amendment, of the resolution. Please lower your voting cards. Anyone who wishes to vote no or in opposition to the resolution, please raise your voting cards. Voting no, we see there is 1. The resolution has passed. We declare the resolution adopted. Raza, thank you very much and congratulations.
Yeah, thank you, President. Thank you.
To our next, and I believe our last resolution. It is the Science and Technology Committee on NATO Airborne Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance. No amendments have been filed with respect to this draft resolution. I call on Mr. Bruno Vittorino, Vice Chairman of the Committee, for the presentation of the resolution. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you allow me, I will address just a few words to you, Mr. Turner, just to say that we appreciate your work the work that you did so far in our NATO Parliamentary Assembly as a president, but I think we will also appreciate the work that you will do starting from now. That will be a lot to strengthen the ties in our organization, in our Atlantic organization. Also to say hi to the elected president, Paolo Ali. I'm really glad that Italy has the presidency of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. And allow me also just one fast remark before I start. Just to say thank you in behalf of all the Portuguese delegation for the tribute that you paid to Mr. José Lelo, a member of our delegation. We were really and truly touched with that thing because we really think it's important that you did it because there's no memory, there's no future if you don't have a memory, and it shows that we have a memory, so we will have a future. I'm presenting the report, dear friends and colleagues, in behalf of Philippe Vittel from France, who is the author of this resolution. He could not, unfortunately, join us today, but the credit for this important resolution goes to him, and it's about the committee's resolution of NATO Airborne Intelligence, Surveillance and Reconnaissance, Airborne ISR. Someone once said that war is 90% information. Ladies and gentlemen, if our men and women in operations do not get the right intelligence at the right time, they will be fighting blind. We must give them the right tools. And to do so, we need to strengthen airborne ISR in the alliance, and this is why we adopt this resolution. We must increase interoperability and integration among allies, especially between US and European systems, and in particular in doctrines and procedures, communication and information systems architectures, and processing, exploitation and dissemination. Furthermore, the allies should examine the possibility of a new multinational research and development effort, building on previous NATO efforts. We also need to overcome challenges in intelligence sharing, not only in airborne ISR, especially when it comes to national procedure, hurdles and technological constraints. More investments in airborne ISR capabilities is also needed. We must support the founding efforts for the final upgrade of NATO AWACS, that the process of defining sustainable options for the follow-on capabilities. We must stay on track for full operational capabilities for NATO's Allied Group Surveillance System by 2018. Moreover, we must increase investment in science and technology relevant to airborne ISR. This should be including management of the big data, connectivity between assets and systems, and science and technology to overcome anti-access aerial denial strategies. Ladies and gentlemen, airborne ISR helps reduce uncertainty, improve strategic anticipation, and inform our political and military decision makers. All of this is particularly valuable in today's uncertain and unstable security environment. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Bruno. Does anyone wish to comment on the resolution before it is voted upon? Any comments on the resolution? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote on adopting the resolution. All those in favor of the resolution, please raise your voting cards. All those voting in favor? Excellent. Lower your voting cards. All those who wish to vote no on the resolution, please raise your voting cards. Those who wish to vote no. Seeing no votes for no, the resolution is adopted. Congratulations, Bruno. We appreciate your work. Next, as we look ahead to the spring session in Tbilisi, in Georgia, it will be the first ever NATO PA session held in Georgia, and the Georgian delegation has prepared a video that they would like us to see, which should be queued up now.
The first thing for a newcomer to notice in Tbilisi is its eclecticism and diversity. It is a place where the West and the East cross, a place which welcomes anyone from any culture.
Kamarjova, the Parliament of Georgia is honored to welcome you to Tbilisi for the spring session of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. It is very symbolic that during the days of the spring session of Parliamentary Assembly in Georgia, we are celebrating the Independence Day of Georgia, May 26. And it is also very symbolic that during last celebrations, together with Georgian soldiers, American, British, Polish, and Latvian soldiers were marching on Georgian streets, which was another demonstration of our growing cooperation with NATO member countries.
The legend of the founding of Tbilisi comes alive at the bathhouses. The sulfur baths and thermal springs are the best means for relaxation. Tbilisi is a hotspot on the world cultural map because it hosts musical, theatre and opera festivals, as well as world-famous singers and art performers. In Georgia, people of all ages, tastes and interests can find something to get inspired by. In Tbilisi, you will see ancient and modern buildings harmoniously situated throughout the city.
I hope your visit to Georgia, which is known for its hospitality and cultural contrast, will stay in your memory for a long time.
For centuries, being situated on the crossroad of Europe and Asia, Georgia has been a connecting point of West and East with the Silk Road. Its true value lies in its strategic location as an economic and transport corridor between the two continents. Caspian gas and oil fields are connected to Europe across Georgia.
Georgia is one of the safest countries in the region, and at the same time, a role model for many in doing business and open governance. The reforms that we conduct allow us to remain a reliable partner to the EU and NATO. For a number of years, Georgia is not a consumer of the security, but a contributor.
In Georgia, you can find petite guest houses in rural tourist destinations or lavish, luxurious hotels all over the country. The variety of microclimates is the reason for Georgia's amazing biodiversity and natural sightseeing potential all year round. Besides climate, another attraction for tourists is the 8,000 years of winemaking tradition, which complements delicious Georgian cuisine, famous for its authenticity and mix of flavors.
This is an excellent opportunity to show our guests the beauty of my hometown in Georgia in general. Welcome to Tbilisi.
At the end of this session, it will conclude my service to the Parliamentary Assembly as President. I wanted to share with you quickly my three highlights. The first was delivering a speech in the Standing Committee in the central lobby of the Palace of Westminster, courtesy of Ming Campbell. The second was having the honor of representing you at Warsaw and addressing the heads of state. delegates would please take their seats. We're going to get started. If you could make your way to the seats. I want to announce and get consent that we have a change in our schedule due to people's flyout schedules. We're going to actually flip the order, and the next order of the day will be the election of the Bureau of the Assembly, and starting with the President. The Standing Committee has received only one nomination, that of Paolo Ali from Italy. There being only one candidate for the post, the election can take place by acclamation, which I now invite the Assembly to do. I now declare that Paolo Ali is elected as President of the Assembly. Paolo, do you have a few words for us? Would you like to take the podium?
Mr. President, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, let me first of all thank our Turkish colleagues and friends for the excellent organization of this annual session. We are going to have a Vice President from Turkey, and this is a clear demonstration of how important Turkey is for us.